UFC 78 is this weekend, and let's break down every single fight on the card. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with too many YouTube channels, and welcome back to another full card breakdown and prediction video. This is where it's pretty self-explanatory. I go through every single fight on the card, I break them down, give my prediction for each fight, and I'd love to know what you guys think afterwards. Guys, timestamps are there if you would like to use them or if you'd like to skip to a particular fight. Let's get into the first early prelim opener. Starting off with the first fight opening up the card, we have Juliana Miller versus Luana Santos. Now, Luana Santos is somebody that I've been watching in LFA for a decent amount of time. I think she's had a few fights now. Yeah, since a year ago, she was signed to LFA. She started off with a split decision loss, but then had two really nice wins behind her. And of course, as a lot of LFA fighters do, they haven't been moving up to the UFC. This is going to be her first fight. Now, Juliana Miller obviously does not have a lot of experience. She came into the UFC winning the Ultimate Fighter and looked pretty good. She got a nice win there, but in her last outing, she got absolutely destroyed by Veronica Hardy. Now, it depends how you want to look at Veronica Hardy, because some people think that she's good for the division, some people don't. To be honest with you, I'm not that high on Veronica Hardy, but guys, long story short, Juliana Miller hasn't really shown that she could hang with any of the top of the division, in my opinion, at least. You know what I mean? She's 3-2. Her record kind of speaks for itself, and I feel like she's going to be 3-3 after this fight, because Luana Santos does have very nice takedowns, very nice ground and pound. She can find some submissions. I like the technique that we've seen from her. Plus, I'm a big believer that the UFC does want to promote Luana Santos here. She's a very, very promotable fighter. So why not give her somebody with very little, I guess you could say, takedown defense, and just have Luana Santos have a very nice, easy win for her first fight in the UFC. So I'm a believer that the UFC knew what they were doing with this matchup, and that's why I'm going to be picking Luana Santos to win. If it wasn't WMA, I would be betting on this fight. But anything can happen in these divisions, you know what I mean? But Luana Santos is going to be the pick for me. Moving on to the next fight, we have the return of Montserrat Ruiz versus Jacqueline Amorim. Now, I'll start with Ruiz because it's been a long time since we've seen her. It's 2 years ago since she lost to Mana Lemos, and now that loss isn't really anything to really cry over, you know what I mean? Lemos is a very, very good fighter. But before that, she's looked pretty good in the UFC. She has a very, very strong wrestling game, comes in with the goal to take you down, try to submit you, try to give you a ground and pound. She has okay technique, especially for the division, but what really worries me in this fight is that she is coming in after 2 years. I'm a big believer in ring rust, and something else that I'm a big believer in is, like we were talking about the last fight, you know how the UFC kind of wants to promote some fighters? Well, Amorim is one of those fighters, because this girl, again, just like taking a look at her, she's very promotable. She's coming in from the LFA, and she looked very, very good in the LFA. She's a finisher. She's one of those girls that actually has power behind her shots. She has very, very nice submissions, very nice takedowns. This girl actually has like a very, very nice all-round skill set. Now, she is coming off of her first hiccup in the UFC against Sam Hughes. Didn't look too great in that fight. Okay, but but still, I was very high on her, and I'm still, you know what? I don't mind her chances still, okay? I really don't, because she has shown some technique. I believe this loss to Sam Hughes was just the division being itself, in the sense where anybody could win, because Amorim, I wholeheartedly believe, is the better fighter, and I believe she's a better fighter than Ruiz. I'm going to give Jacqueline Amorim one more chance. She has way more tools to win. Ruiz is coming off of a 2-year layoff. I don't like that coming back. Although she's 30 years old, and although she has looked very, very strong, I can see, like, even if she goes for some takedowns, Amorim will be ready with some submissions and even trying to catch her, like, while she's shooting for some takedowns. You know what I mean? I believe she's just the better fighter, and I don't know what happened in this Sam Hughes loss. Again, it's just probably the division being what the division has done, where anybody can win at any given time, but I like Amorim. If she doesn't win this fight, I'm officially off the train. But Amorim is going to be the pick again. Moving on to the next fight, we have Josh Parisian returning, and he's fighting against Martin Buday. Now, I'm a little bit confused by this, because Josh Parisian did have a USADA issue, and he had to pull out of his fight. I think it was a couple weeks ago. If not, it was like a month ago. So I don't know if they're just ignoring that, or if the USADA issue actually was like, hey, you know what? Maybe the supplement was tainted. I don't know, and I'm confused because I forgot that he was fighting on this card, and he did, like, 100% he popped for a USADA issue. I just don't know what happened with that. I guess everything's okay. But anyways, okay, so here's the story with Josh Parisian. A very, very rocky road in the UFC. As you can see, a 15-6 record. He's had wins where he looked okay. He has had losses where he hasn't looked good at all. And he's one of those fighters where it's just like, I feel like at heavyweight, like I was talking about with the W strawweight division, it's one of those things where, like, if you're at heavyweight, anything can really happen. But he hasn't really shown where he's like this huge, huge power guy. But that's something that Martin Buday is. Martin Buday is a very, like, he likes to be on his feet, standing up. He's a little bit of an inactive striker, but his power is there, and he has some very, very nice KOs. He's been in the UFC for a little while now. I believe the contenders, yes, The Contender Series, he had a very, very nice KO. And since then, it's honestly just been pretty much smooth sailing. And he's looked pretty good in the UFC. I don't believe that this guy is anything like special coming into the heavyweight. Like if he busts in the rankings, I feel like he might get a couple wins, but he'll have a problem at the top of heavyweight. He's just a little bit too inactive for my liking. But again, with a guy with his power, anything can really happen. Josh Parisian, though, I haven't seen like... We know the game plan with Josh Parisian. He's going to come in, he's going to throw hands, and he's either going to win or not win. You know what I mean? There's not too much of a game plan behind it, where Martin Buday is going to wait, look for a shot, and try to KO you. And he has seen that power, and we have seen Josh Parisian KO'd before. That's why I'm going to pick Martin Buday to win this fight. I'm decently confident in saying so. I think he's going to win this one. My pick is going to be Martin Buday. Moving on to the next fight, guys, and this one's a little bit tough for me to pick, okay? We have Francis Marshall taking on Isaac Dulgarian. Now, Isaac Dulgarian is his first fight in the UFC, okay? And he has a lot of hype behind him. Like, if you guys have been following it all, this dude, look forward to his debut because he has the potential to be something special. However, the key word is potential there because, of course, he hasn't fought in the UFC yet, and the people that he has fought, he's only had 5 fights ever, okay? It's like... He hasn't really fought anybody of any significance, but in those fights, he has shown fantastic knockout power. He has shown a fantastic all-around game, a fantastic wrestling game. So it seems like the technique is there, but what I question is for Dulgarian, like, what if you really get into a dogfight? What happens in the UFC once you fight these guys that are clearly a higher level? And Francis Marshall is actually that higher level, okay? So coming to the UFC, he's looked pretty good. Like, he had a very, very nice win against Marcelo Rojo, and then he had a split decision loss to William Gomez. In this fight, it was a very, very close fight, and I believe that this loss is nothing to take against him. He showed, like, in this fight, I was convinced that Francis Marshall really did belong in the UFC because, again, there were multiple points in that fight where William Gomez was in trouble. It was a very close fight. And to be honest with you, while that fight did go to a decision, I've seen a lot from Francis Marshall in that fight where it really makes me go, okay, you know what? This guy's pretty good. I like him. You know, he's a very nice all-round game. That's the problem, though. We've seen Francis Marshall. He's able to get some nice wins. He has a very nice technique. He's a very nice all-around fighter. Isaac Dulgarian does seem like he can be that guy, but we just haven't seen him in the UFC, and that's why I can't pick him. I can't pick him. The technique is there, okay? The technique is there. He looks like he could be something special in the UFC. I'm not going to pick a guy who's 5-0 and has never fought in the UFC and fought guys who, like, you see people like, for example, like I always talk to you guys about if you follow the channel, I'm a big LFA guy. I like watching those underground fights. Like, no, that's not necessarily underground, but you know what I mean? I like watching the smaller promotions in that sense. Those fighters are good, and then you can have wins over people where it's like, okay, that's a win of significance. This dude hasn't really had any significant wins. Like, look at his opponents, you know? I'm not going to pick him. I'm not going to pick a guy with 5 fights. While he has looked good and while the potential is there, my pick is going to be Francis Marshall. I've seen more from him, and I believe that he's the safer pick in this scenario. Francis Marshall is going to be the pick for me. I'm like 70-30 on it, but Francis Marshall's my pick. Moving on to the next fight, we have the return of Terrance McKinney, and he's taking on Mike Breeden. Terrance McKinney 2 weeks ago had a loss against Nazim Sadikov. Now, I think Sadikov is a very good loss to have, in my opinion, but the story with Terrance McKinney is he was very, very hyped up coming to the UFC, and I was on board with the hype train, to be honest with you. This dude looked like he was going to be something special. And then the loss to Drew Dober happened, when then bounced back with a nice win, but then he had 2 really rough losses just this year. It hasn't been in good recent times for Terrance McKinney. Here's the thing, though. I think both Ismail Bonfim and Nazim Sadikov are good losses to have. Those losses just showed me that, like, perhaps Terrance McKinney isn't, like, going to be really anything special in this lightweight division, because what happens when he gets to the top 15 of this division? You know what I mean? Drew Dober was that first taste, and he's losing to these other guys. So he's a good fighter. I'm just completely off the Terrance McKinney train. He's taking on a guy, Mike Breeden, who we haven't seen in a little while, and he hasn't been able to get a win in the UFC just yet. He's primarily a striker with an okay rest of the game. There's nothing that really sticks out to me about Mike Breeden. And to be honest with you guys, it's tough because I want to pick Terrance McKinney, but he has been losing. 13-6 now. That's not a good record to have. And we've seen him but he then ended up having a win against Eric Gonzalez, where it's just like another guy kind of like around the same level of Mike Breeden. Mike Breeden is coming in over a year away, so ring rust might be a thing. I'm kind of leaning like towards 50-50 on this fight, but if you had a gun on my head, I'd pick Terrance McKinney. I think he's just the better skilled fighter, but we have seen problems with McKinney's chin as of late, so I'm like, I don't know anymore. I don't know about this. Terrance McKinney, he's coming in shape, obviously, because that was a very quick loss. He didn't take any damage in his last fight. I'm going to pick Terrance McKinney very reluctantly, but I'm not so confident on either side of this fight, guys. But Terrance McKinney is going to be my pick because I have to make one for the video. Moving on to the next fight, we have the return of Marcus McGhee. I'm very excited for the return of Marcus McGhee, and he's taking on JP Buys. Now, I'll start off with JP Buys, okay? Because JP Buys has not had a win in the UFC just yet. It's been an unfortunate run for him. However, these losses have aged decently well, and it's not like he got absolutely destroyed. It's just that we found out that he's having a little bit of a chin issue, you know? He's a good fighter, okay? I think he's better than his record, which is 9-5. He's taken on Marcus McGhee, who came out of LFA, and I saw this guy in the LFA, and I was like, whoa, this dude looks actually insane, but he fought a guy who's 8-7, but that's nothing to take care of. But then he came into the UFC and looked absolutely fantastic against Journey Newson. This guy seems like he could really be something special in the bantamweight division. This guy's powerful. He's aggressive. He comes forward. He can strike with you. He can grapple with you. I'm not saying he's the best fighter ever. I'm just saying I am on the Marcus McGhee hype train right now. JP Buys is also a good fighter. He could offer some resistance in the wrestling, but I don't think it's going to be enough of the power that Marcus McGhee has. I can't go with JP Buys because he's so inactive and he's been on a 3-loss streak. He hasn't been won in the UFC yet. Marcus McGhee came in looking like a train. I'm going to pick Marcus McGhee, man. I'm going to pick him either by KO or by submission. I don't know, but I'm very confident that he's going to get it done this time around. Moving on to the next fight, we have Josh Fremd taking on Jamie Pickett. Now, Josh Fremd has had a little bit of a rough go into the UFC. Coming to the UFC, he had 2 pretty rough losses, both against Tresean Gore and Anthony Hernandez. And I think those are 2 fighters that are okay to lose against. You know what I mean? It's not like he's really losing too badly here. But then he finally, 4 months ago, he's been a very active fighter against Cedric Dumas. He got a very, very nice win in that fight. He's taken on Jamie Pickett, who has had a really rough go. He's been in the UFC for a long time now, and he's been fairly active too. He's on a little bit of a skid, and those losses haven't exactly aged too well in Kyle Dawkins. You know, like, it's tough, man. It's tough because Jamie Pickett is an okay fighter. I don't think he's like one of the greatest fighters in middleweight, you know what I mean? He would lose to probably anybody in the top 15, but these losses aren't exactly aging well, except for depending on how you want to look at the Bo Nickel one, because he 100% got hit in the nuts in this fight and then got submitted right after. But it's like Bo Nickel really seems like he's going to be something special. So would that fight really have went any differently? I don't know. But regardless, to be honest with you, I erased this loss from my mind in his record because it was very clear he got hit in the nuts and then couldn't do anything after that. So would he have probably lost? I probably think so. But you know what? In my mind, I'm looking at him coming on a 2-fight skid, not a 3-fight skid. That doesn't really matter too much, though, because Jamie Pickett, it's like both these guys have a decent all-around game. However, Jamie Pickett's definitely the striker, and Josh Fremd is definitely the wrestler. Jamie Pickett, I feel like, doesn't have the takedown defense to really defend against Josh Fremd, and I feel like Josh Fremd is going to take him down, either submit him or ground and pound him all the way to decision. I'm no longer on the Jamie Pickett hype train. Well, it's not like there really was a Jamie Pickett hype train. I mean, no disrespect to him. I just like the improvements we've seen from Josh Fremd. I think he's going to get takedown. I think he's going to get a submission. I think he's going to win this fight fairly easily. Give me Josh Fremd for my pick in this fight. Moving on to the next fight, we have Tafon Nchukwi versus taking on AJ Dobson. Now, both guys are actually pretty similar in their skill sets, similar in their career. This fight, I don't know how it's really going to play out, this one. Anyways, AJ Dobson, we've seen quite a bit from him at this point. He's coming into the UFC. He's had 2 pretty rough losses, although he didn't look horrible in those fights. But here's the thing. Tafon, he's had a really, really rocky record in the UFC, but then he tried to go up to 205 and had 2 really, really rough losses right away. Now he's back down to middleweight. It seems like I did not know he was doing that. Regardless, probably the best move. He was having some really, really rough issues. You know what I mean? Those losses were a huge problem for him. You know what I mean? But it's tough because I see both these guys having a little bit similar skill sets. The reason why I'm leaning towards Tafon in this fight is because I don't know, because I was thinking, you know what, he got up to 205. Maybe he's used to fighting. He's gotten used to training or fighting against some guys that were even bigger. But then he had no success at 205. You know what I mean? AJ Dobson's a good striker. He might be a little bit more active. I don't know, man. This is more of a 50-50 fight in my opinion. I don't know what to think about this one. I don't know if it's going to go to the ground. I don't know if they're going to keep standing up. I don't know who's going to win the striking exchanges. They're both pretty similar skill sets, to be honest with you. I think this should be a pick'em fight, man. I don't know. If you made me choose, I'd go with Tafon, but man, this is honestly a 50-50 fight. I wish I could pick for you. I wish I could break this down more, but it's a very, very close fight in my opinion. I'm going to go with Tafon though. Moving on to the featured fight of the card, we have Polyana Viana returning. He's taking on Iasmin Lucindo. Now guys, Polyana Viana, I feel like she's supposed to fight a long time ago. She's definitely had 1 or 2 canceled fights, and we're finally seeing her back. She's coming into the UFC with a lot of hype because, again, she's a very promotable fighter. You know, I mean, we've seen her a lot, and we've seen her have some success. We've seen her have some losses. She looked very good in her last fight against Nchukwi. She got a very, very quick knockdown. She's taken on Lucindo, who also looked very, very good in her last fight against Brogan Walker. I believe, well, I don't want to say she had the better performance. She definitely had the more dominant performance because Polyana Viana had a very, very quick game. Yeah, a quick fight, excuse me. Lucindo, though, coming to the UFC, she's looking pretty good. She had a little bit of a rough loss against Iasmin Nchukwi, who it isn't a rough loss to have at all. You know what I mean? It is aged very, very well, but then she came back with a very, very dominant performance against Brogan Walker. She has a lot of experience for her age. She's only 21 years old. And I really like her in this matchup, man. I think she has more tools to win because Polyana Viana is going to come in. She's going to want to KO you. She's going to want to submit you. But we've seen Lucindo able to really come over some adversity and get better every single time we see her. We've seen her able to fight, whether it's standing up or on the ground. She'll have the more options in this fight. Well, I'm not saying Polyana Viana doesn't. I'm just saying that Polyana Viana, I feel like if she wins this fight, it's going to be a very quick knockout like her last fight, okay? And I don't think she's going to do that to Lucindo. I think Lucindo's going to slip whatever she has to throw. I think she's going to take her down. I feel like I have one of those gut feelings right now, man. I don't know why. I think Lucindo is going to control her on the ground. Now, I don't know why. I feel like that's the game plan that's going to come in here. And I think Lucindo's going to win this fight. Even if they do have stand-up fight here, I'm not on the Polyana Viana train at all. We've seen her lose to better competition. And I believe Lucindo will be that better competition. She's 21 years old, getting better every single time we see her. Already a lot of experience. Give me Iasmin Lucindo in this fight. I think she's going to get a win over Polyana Viana. Moving on to, I believe I said the last fight was the featured fight, but this is the featured fight. I don't know why I said that. Anyways, we have Khalil Roundtree versus Chris Daukaus. Now, this is a fight that I'm very excited for, guys, because Chris Daukaus, if you've been watching the UFC at all, we know Chris Daukaus has had very, very little success in the UFC heavyweight division. He was a very fast fighter, a very good-looking prospect coming into the UFC at the heavyweight division, but then we saw that he has a little bit of a chin issue, and I don't mean any disrespect behind him, but he is not built for heavyweight. This dude is definitely a 205er, so he's had very, very rough losses, and he has fought in okay fighters, but still, this dude crumbles. He's not it at the heavyweight. You know what I mean? He wasn't a good fighter. He didn't belong there, okay? He's moving down to light heavyweight. This is why I have a problem, because I don't know how he's going to look at light heavyweight. He's just going to get shot. He's going to get cracked with a shot and then crumble again. How good of shape is he going to come into this? Plus, this fight was just canceled. I don't remember why it was canceled, but I believe it was on the side of Chris Daukaus. He's taken on Khalil Roundtree, who had a little bit of a career resurgence lately. Every single time we've seen him since a year ago, he has looked better and better and better, besides the fight with this against Dustin Jacoby. But regardless, I don't remember. I'd have to go back. I don't remember who I thought won this fight, but there was a lot of controversy in this fight. I believe I did have Khalil Roundtree winning this fight. This is tough, man, because Chris Daukaus is going to come in. He's going to have. He was fast for the he was fast for the heavyweight division. He has very nice boxing. You know, he's just an okay fighter. Khalil Roundtree is a very good fighter. I would imagine this fight's going to stay standing, and Khalil Roundtree, I could see really chopping him up with the leg kicks. I don't know, man. I don't know. Because Chris Daukaus, again, he was fast heavyweight, but how's he going to look at light heavyweight? These guys are significantly faster. These guys are significantly better. I got to go with Khalil Roundtree. Until I see Chris Daukaus have a nice win in the 205 division, like against a guy like Khalil Roundtree, I'm not getting on the Chris Daukaus train. Khalil Roundtree is a very proven striker, and he's a better striker than anybody Chris Daukaus has fought as of recent. You know? Significantly better. But maybe Chris Daukaus will be bigger. Maybe he'll be used to fighting bigger guys. Maybe he'll be able to control Khalil Roundtree. I don't know. I'm going to pick Khalil Roundtree just because I need to see something from Chris Daukaus. If he comes in, he has a very dominant performance. I'll be back on the Chris Daukaus train. I'll be like, hey, you know what? Maybe he'll be a problem in this division. But I'm going to go with Khalil Roundtree for my pick right here. Moving on to the co-main event, we have the return of Cub Swanson. He's taking on Hakeem Dawodu. Now, Hakeem is he's a fighter who has very, very nice technique. Me and Hakeem has been, I don't really know what to think of him because he has shown very nice fundamentals. He's a very nice striking throughout his career. You know, he's been in the UFC for a very, very long time. We've seen him have some ups. We've seen him have some downs, and he is coming off of a little bit of a rough loss against Juliana Rosa 10 months ago. Cub Swanson, though. Cub Swanson, if this fight was taking place in like 2015, I'd be all over Cub Swanson. I think he is the better fighter, but the problem is Cub Swanson, again, we've seen him in the UFC. He's been in here for a very, very long time. His age is finally showing. The damage is finally catching up to him, and he has not seemed like the same guy at all. He comes back from he just tried going down to the bantamweight division and starting a new fight, but he did not look good there, and Jonathan Martinez really, really put a performance on him. But I think Jonathan Martinez is a fantastic fighter. But even in these other two fights, Cub Swanson, while he did get a win over Darren Elkins, this dude, I don't believe he's as fast as he used to be, and I don't believe he can take as much punishment as he used to be. He's 39 years old now. He's had a ton of wars. Cub Swanson is one of my favorite fighters to watch of all time. He's one of my favorite fighters that I've grown up watching this guy. You know what I mean? I hope he gets the win. But I don't mind this matchup for him against Hakeem Dawodu. Because Cub Swanson's a better striker. Okay? This fight's definitely going to be on the feet. Hakeem does have very nice fundamentals. He has very nice counter striking. He uses them very well. My brain's telling me to pick Hakeem, but my gut's telling me that Swanson has a decent chance here. Just the matchup for these two. I don't know, man. There are some tricky fights to pick on this card. I can't go with Cub Swanson, man. I got to go with the 32-year-old, the one who's been looking better. He's been making slight improvements every single time we've seen him. It's nothing where it's like, wow, it's Hakeem's back. Well, Hakeem's going to do his thing. You know what I mean? I'm going with Hakeem, but I don't know. Hakeem's going to be the pick for me, but Cub Swanson's very live in this fight, let me tell you. Moving on to the main event, we have Vicente Luque taking on Rafael dos Anjos. This is going to be a fantastic fight. Vicente Luque is always fun to watch fight, and same with Rafael dos Anjos. I love watching both of these guys. I don't want to see either of them lose, to be honest with you. So, Vicente Luque, to be honest with you, I've had a little bit of a problem. No, I don't have a problem, but I was really convinced on this guy as he was making his rounds in the division that he was going to be champion one day. I wholeheartedly believe that. Now, I understand that, why you might think that's a stupid take, but I really liked what I was seeing from this guy. Initially, I'm not going to lie to you, when Kamaru Usman was reigning, I was like, Luque's the guy to beat him. Put Luque in there. He can do it. You know what I mean? But we've seen him have some unfortunate losses. So he had some very, very nice wins in the UFC, but then he's obviously had a little bit of a rough go against both Jeff Neal and Bilal Muhammad. I was shocked that Bilal beat him. I was shocked, okay? But Bilal just keeps seeming to win. I don't know how he got that done, but then Jeff Neal also, it was a really, really rough go. Vicente Luque's been off for something that I just found out recently, and it wasn't an injury, it was like a health issue. I don't recall what that was, but that worries me first of all. Rafael dos Anjos, though, he's at the end of his career. He's looking to take just fun fights now. He's no longer making a title run, so that's always got to be something to take into consideration, where it's like, how motivated is this guy to beat Vicente Luque right now? He's looked good in his last fight, but we have seen Rafael dos Anjos obviously past his prime. To be honest with you, he was winning this fight against Rafael Fiziev. He was able to control him. And then, of course, he had the win against Brian Barberena, where he looked very, very good. This is a tough fight to pick for me, because I could see a world where Rafael dos Anjos takes down Vicente Luque, controls him, and either submits him or does what he wants to him. Although Vicente Luque is no slouch on the ground, I think dos Anjos is a little bit better. But I can also see a world where Luque just storms him and KOs Rafael dos Anjos, just like we've seen him kind of like against Eddie Alvarez. I can see both those scenarios taking place, and that's why it's a tough fight to pick for me. Typically, if I didn't know that there was a health issue with Vicente Luque, who apparently, according to Vicente Luque, he's good, ready to go right now, but he's been off for a little while now. We haven't seen him for almost a year, and these are really two tough losses, How much he's been training in that year, I don't know. There's a lot of questions coming to this fight, and then I got to question the motivation of dos Anjos, because again, he's clearly fighting for money now. He's clearly taking fights that he finds fun. He's no longer putting in the work to be a title contender. He's 38 years old, past his prime. Vicente Luque hasn't looked the same. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm going to slightly lean towards Vicente Luque in this matchup, but I could very well see a world where he gets controlled and submitted by Rafael dos Anjos. Either that or just controlled in ground and pound, because dos Anjos was kind of doing that, not on the ground, but he was controlling him up against the fence against Fiziev and still looked good. While dos Anjos is past his prime, he is not nearly washed at all. I feel like he still has a lot of fight left in him. I'm talking to him like he's done. You know what I mean? He's not done at all. I'm going to pick Luque. I'm going to pick the 31-year-old. I'm going to pick Luque by a quick first-round KO, but I'm not so confident that will happen, but that is going to be my official prediction. And guys, that is every single fight on UFC Vegas 78. I'd love to know what you thought about my picks, and I'd love to know what you are picking down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree with any of my picks? Let me know if you're going to be betting on any fights, and thank you so much for watching, everybody. On the screen right now, you will have 2 videos from the Clenbat channel if you'd like to continue watching. I think they are pretty great. I will see you either there or in the next video, guys. Take care.